You're listening to the Warriorside Podcast, transformational storytelling from veterans and first responders. Tales of triumph, loss, and perseverance.
Welcome to the Warriorside Podcast. The stories you hear from our veterans and first responders are reflections of their individual paths that are certain to be different from yours. What worked for their healing and awareness may not work for you. Alternative approaches to health, such as plant medicines and non-ordinary states of consciousness coaching, are frequently discussed throughout these episodes. This is simply a byproduct of the experience of many of our storytellers and is in no way an endorsement of these tools that are clearly not for everyone. In every case, these experiences were executed with mindful preparation, professional facilitation, and supportive integration coaching. We do not recommend or endorse any specific substance or protocol to anyone. I am a coach, not a licensed therapist, psychologist, or medical professional. The conversations here reflect my own learning process and the unique connection I share with each guest. What you witness is an expression of that specific moment and is not intended as medical or psychological advice. Everyone is on their own path. Your path is your own. Take these conversations in curiosity and with the explorer's spirit. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. Finally, if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide or are in crisis, don't wait. Call or text 988 or call 911 immediately. There is a way through the dark, but you have to reach out and connect. And so it is. Connection is the medicine. And this is the Warriorside Podcast. Let's talk over fire.
It's February 2nd, 2009, and I wake up to a phone call from my mother. She says, "Hey, I need you to check on your father. He hasn't been answering the phone. I think something's wrong." And see, she left that house 2 months earlier out of fear. So now he's alone, and he's silent, and I need to see what's going on. So I'm speeding through the rain, and the windshield wipers, they can't even keep up. I get to the house, I knock on the door, I ring the doorbell, nothing. So I check to see if it's unlocked, and it is. And that's something he would never do. So I open the door, I look to the right, and there he is. He has his service pistol on his right side, the dog curled up behind his legs. On the floor, scattered pictures and an empty bottle of Sambuca. And I couldn't believe it. He just took his own life. I couldn't believe it was real, so I did exactly what I was taught to do, and I shut down. You see, I grew up walking on eggshells. My father, he was a tough man. He parented out of fear. He was explosive. He'd go silent. He'd shut down. He wouldn't talk to us for days. He was unpredictable. And my mom, well, she just wanted everything to be okay. So she would just sweep everything underneath the rug. No explanations, no apologies. Just bury those feelings down and let's move on. So I taught myself how to shut down, and by 13 years old, I was drinking and I was doing drugs, got arrested multiple times, held up at gunpoint. I knew I needed a change, so I joined the Navy, and it gave me everything I needed. I had pride for the first time, purpose, felt like I was a part of something that was bigger than myself. And when I got out, though, nothing had changed. In fact, maybe it was even worse. My brother was in prison. My parents were still fighting. My dad lost it all again. And he was gone. And I'm standing over his body. I call 911. Then I call my mom. And to this day, I can still hear her screaming out his name. The firefighters came, tried to grab the body, but the dog was protecting it, barking and growling. So I had to go over there and grab him, just so that they can take the body away. And as I watched them carry the body out of the house, I realized I did what I needed to do. I felt nothing. I was numb. I had shut everything down. So I stayed back and cleaned up the scene, and I cut the blood out of the carpet while I swept all those emotions right underneath the rug. But life goes on. And I got married, had some kids, built a little life for myself. But those emotions that you push down deep, they always find a way to come back up. Always. And mine came up with anger. I overreacted with my kids. I started to shut down. I got divorced. And then those intrusive thoughts started to come in, like maybe it's time to end it all. And I had to ask myself, am I becoming my father? But my sister was 15. My sister was 15 years younger than me. She was 13 when my dad passed away. And man, I loved her so much. And all I ever wanted to do was protect her. Whenever I'd see her in pain or her feelings hurt or whatever, man, it just broke my heart. Broke my heart. And even though we were on different sides of the country, we always found ways to keep in touch. We'd send funny texts, share music, share books. I got to see her grow up. I got to see her become a mom, and an amazing one at that. And then in June 2023, we went out for the first time as just brother and sister. There was no father figure role. It was like me, her, and my cousin. We went out and we partied. We danced and we laughed. And man, we had such a great time. And I remember every 30 minutes I'd grab her by the shoulders and I'd tell her how much I loved her and how proud I was of her. The woman that she had become, the mother that she'd become. I mean, it was one of the most amazing nights of my life. And I felt so much joy and so much love. It was amazing. But then on October 15th, 2023, I got a call. And I got this call while I was running a 4x4x48 challenge to end veteran suicide. And that challenge is 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And I was 44 miles in, getting ready for my last 4 miles, and I got this call. And it was my stepfather. And he was crying. And he told me my sister died, and she took her own life. I spent many years visualizing myself walking her down the aisle at her wedding, and there I was walking her ashes out of the funeral home. And it was too much. There was no burying this. There was no sweeping this under the rug. I needed help. So I reached out, and before I know it, I'm on a plane. I'm headed out to Mexico, a veteran retreat. And I'm laying on the ground, I got the eye mask on, I just drank a whole bunch of psilocybin, and I go on this journey, man, and I go deep. I go deep, and it's dark, and I go straight to hell, and I start feeling all of those feelings that I had buried for so long. I felt all the pain, all the sadness, all the grief, all the guilt. I remembered that I was the one who told my mom to leave 2 months before my dad died. He was alone, and I could feel it. I could feel it all. And I cried, and my body shook. And I needed another man to come and grab my hand and just tell me that it was going to be okay. And then the next night, did it again. Same eye mask, psilocybin, started off right back in that dark place, right back in hell. And I remember thinking to myself, again? Like, why am I coming back here again? And at that moment, a hand hits my chest. And the healer walks up, hand on my chest, and he says, "Brother, you got to open up your heart." And those words, "open up your heart," they pulse through my body. Like, what does that mean? Open up your heart. And I thought about it, and I realized for so long, all I've ever wanted to do is change who I was to be somebody different. And I realized what I really needed was to just know who I was, to know myself, and to accept myself. All the love, all the pain, all the guilt, all the shame, all the joy, all of it. And at that moment, the whole journey started to change. The ground broke open, and I felt like I was just getting pulled out of hell. And I felt lighter. And then the energy changed. And it was so familiar. I felt like I had been there before, and all of a sudden I was right back in that moment in June 2023 with my sister. And we were laughing, and we were dancing, and I was telling her how much I loved her and how proud I was of her. And it was amazing. I felt it all. I felt all the love, all the joy, all the awe. It was so much, I didn't even know how to handle it. It was like that, like my body didn't know how to respond to such emotions like this. And I started to laugh and cry at the same time. My whole body started to shake, and the two hands on my chest again, and they said, "Man, you got to breathe." So I take the eye mask off, and I take this deep breath. And I realized I got exactly what I needed. I needed to feel again. I needed to feel all of it. And it's pretty crazy when you start to feel again. It's overwhelming. It's not easy. But over time, I started to really understand where these feelings were coming from and why and how they felt in my body. And then I learned to communicate them. And man, once I could do that, my relationships just started to blossom. And now I'm married to this amazing woman there. Who I can talk to her about anything. No judgment. It's beautiful. And my kids, they get to see their father feel. They get to see him cry. I do this a lot now. I'm making up for 20 years. They get to see him heal, and it's beautiful. And I'll tell you, I've learned so much from this. I've learned that healing has no endpoints. Healing's a journey, and it's honest, and it's hard, and it's worth it. And I've learned that I don't have to do this alone, that I have so many amazing people in my corner every day willing to help out. And I've learned that I don't have to change, I don't have to be somebody different. I just have to know who I am at my core and accept all my parts. And the greatest lesson that I've learned, the greatest lesson is that love never dies. Thank you.
Welcome back to Warriorside, another amazing edition here with an incredible, as you've already seen, the incredible storyteller, Michael Giardina. Welcome, Michael. What's happening, brother?
How's it going? Thanks for having me on here, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Michael, you said you're out in California, right?
I am now, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
That area.
but from Georgia?
Yeah, well, I'm from Tucson.
Oh, okay.
Georgia in like 1988, 89. So we moved there twice. Yeah, then I stayed in, Kennesaw area. That's where I was raised. Cobb County, and yeah, I went to school at Kennesaw State University, and yeah, the whole thing, man.
Was it the Navy that took you out to California?
So the Navy took me out to California. I got out of the Navy, spent a year in Tucson, like just racing triathlons. When I got out of the military, I just did a bunch of endurance stuff, and then went back to Georgia to help out with some family stuff. And then that was like 2006, I think, and then stayed there until 2014.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't think most people can really tell, but you're like ultra top kind of, and you'll probably laugh when I say this, but I'm pretty sure it's true. You're like top 1% of conditioned athletes in the whole world, sort of thing. I'm curious how you got into that whole space.
Yeah, so I got into CrossFit. In the military, I did a bunch of, we trained, a lot of it was endurance based, all that kind of stuff. And then early on, I don't remember how I got turned on to it, but it was probably 2001, 2002-ish. And there was, somebody had told me about CrossFit. I got on the website, started doing a little bit in base gyms and that kind of stuff. And then, sorry, there's a school next to me and it's really loud. I don't know if you guys can hear.
We can't hear.
Mhm.
Okay, good. So, and then I really got back into triathlons. I got hurt a little bit, couldn't lift, couldn't do anything. So I just ran and biked and swam. I got into that. And then when I moved back to Georgia, an old Navy friend of mine helped start a gym out there called CrossFit Atlanta. And it was just this dungeon of a gym, man. Like it was this old dusty garage, chains hanging down with rings on it, old rusty barbells that the owner got off of Craigslist. It was pretty gross, but it was effective. And I fell in love with it there. And then went to my first seminar in like 2006. And then somehow got on the CrossFit staff and worked for CrossFit for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then, just really competed in it. I found myself to be pretty good at it early on when there weren't as many people doing it. So I got lucky enough to go to the games 6 times, 3 times individual, 3 times on a team. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it was cool, man. It was a good experience.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. And I'm not comparing the two. I enjoy fitness.
You're good.
But okay. No, no, I'm not comparing, but no, but this is serious. Because I think about it. So I have an 18-year-old son that's into fitness. I personally, fitness for me was an outlet. It was what I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a small portion of my mental health journey, but just a small piece. And I see it in my 18-year-old son who thinks that is his therapy. How much would you say that you pushing yourself was a mental health thing, and how much of it was just because you enjoyed it? Like, do you think there was a part of you that may have overexceeded yourself because you were maybe pushing things down and using that as your coping?
100%. My fitness is completely changed over the last 2 years. And it's hard because I would consider myself really fit back then. And things have slid a little bit. purposefully, or maybe not so purposefully. It's probably happened as a product of healing through other areas, right? I think fitness for me, one, it was a bit of a distraction, and sometimes a distraction or some level of dissociation is good when you're going through it, right? So it wasn't like it was this super negative thing. It was a distraction. I shouldn't have done it. No, it worked. It worked really well. It was a chance to, I worked myself into a lot of pain, like rolling around on the ground in a lot of pain. And it was a little bit of a chance to feel something. It was a bit about feeling the pain. And there was some enjoyment there because I think there was a lot of numbness otherwise. When I went to Mexico and, did some psilocybin and 5-MeO, and that was a bit of a changing point in my fitness journey, to be honest with you. It was a changing point in a lot of things, but fitness was one of those things where it was a lot harder to push to that point. And it was almost like I didn't have to anymore,
Yeah.
which was tough because there was a level of fitness that I identified with. I wouldn't even know that I would say like I enjoyed it. I identified with it. I
Yeah.
identified with being this like fit person who can do all these things and push to a certain level. And that kind of had to go. There are a lot of parts of me, I think, over the last few years that have, had to die, so to speak, and I've had to grieve. And it's been hard, but it's been the right thing to do, the right path to be on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And and you said it perfectly, like, that there has been a shift. It's not that you've letting yourself go, you're not taking care of yourself, but
Right.
and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and it may not be exact, but for me, it was an obsession that I had to look a certain way. I had to be capable of this, capable of that.
Yeah.
And then it was when I realized, oh, I don't have to do these things anymore. Not that I don't want to take care of myself, but I don't have to kill myself.
Yeah.
So it's more of what am I doing to prepare for down the road versus right now?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's shifted into things. I mean, I like being outside of the gym now. We like to go hiking. We like to go snowboard. We like to, do all that kind of stuff. So a lot of what I do in the gym or in the garage supports things that I enjoy doing with friends and family outside. Right. And it's less about dominating. Like it was about just like, I want to, crush myself and then be on the leaderboard and crush everyone else and win all the time. And, there's a whole performative aspect to, and throughout a lot of my life, it was all about, winning in some regard, whether it's degrees, work, this, that, and that's how I earned love, and fitness was part of that. I got a lot of attention for it.
Yep.
It's a very common thing to see with people showing up for retreats, especially in the populations that we're working with. I forget, can you remind us what you did in the Navy, Michael?
I was an operations specialist. I actually worked in a completely different role than most do. I worked with reconnaissance aircraft. So I spent 14 months in and out of Oman, from like Diego Garcia. So I'd hang out in Diego Garcia until they needed me to go in the desert, and then I'd go in the desert, and then we'd come out. And really what we did there, we worked in before, when I left, the Air Force came in and just created this massive tent city, and it completely changed everything. Of course, it was as I was leaving. But when we were there, we just worked in a tiny little shack in the middle of the desert, and we slept in a little shack, and we worked, 7 days a week, and took the imagery and sent it over to 101st and 1F Marine Corps. That's essentially what we did.
Gotcha. Okay. But in our community, it's just what I see is that there are, 8 times out of 10, just Greek god bodies walking in completely broken from within, and you would never know it looking outside of them. And a lot of the mainstream media talks about how health and fitness are sort of like the way out of depression. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the things that you guys were saying. It's this illusion of mental resilience of, hey, I was able to crush myself over the course of 30 miles or whatever it is. And that, by the way, that whole time, I wasn't focusing on all the rest of the stuff, but as soon as the race is over, like, here it comes. Um, Again, like you said, it's not like it's not supposed to happen. In fact, I think it's much like psychotropic drugs like Wellbutrin and, Paxil and all the things. I think it's really, really, really helpful in helping people where they happen to be at that moment get to the next space of their life. What is important to know about that is everything is energy. And if working out has anything to do with avoidance or detachment or even anger of the self, like I notice my arms aren't as big as that other dude's, or, there's my triceps are a little bit more flabby than the rest of the women and stuff. And so I need to, out of shame and out of judgment to the self, I need to change this. All of that stuff is energy, and that energy goes within. So it's like toxic gasoline. And in a way, and at some point, it doesn't matter how fast or strong or quick you are, like you said in your speech, at some point it all comes to a head. It has to come out somewhere. And no problem, like you said, it's not like it wasn't supposed to happen. But then it's good to be aware that the undoing is undoing all of that just daily, sometimes minute to minute pumping of shame and negativity and avoidance into the musculature. We have a really, really powerful gift in our brains, is the idea of neural pruning. And so, like, when you're going through things, you're having an experience and your neural pathways are being developed, they're a reflection of your experience of what is. It's a reflection of your experience of what is. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have anything to do with truth. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. It's just how was one interpreting the experience. And so if one is working out for years and years and years with hate and discontent and embracing the suck and all the stuff like that, that's what all that, you can imagine a garden of neural pathways of hate and discontent and all that. The gift of neural pruning is when you start to shift your intentions, you start to shift your energy, you start to shift your focus on abundance and love and brightness and clean strength and all these things in time, because your brain is super efficient. It's like, oh, we don't go down these neural pathways anymore. We need to get rid of them. And so they literally prune it like they prune a tree. They just cut those things off of this hate and discontent. And then over time, from the outside, your body doesn't have to change whatsoever, but from the inside, instead of being filled with this gasoline of, shame and anger and all the things, it starts to get filled with this more vibrant state, which is what I think you're talking about now. And it's like this whole transformational physiological process that happens on the inside. And I think I would be curious to hear your thoughts on if you notice like your somatic or inner state of being now as compared to, years past when the shape that you were in was built on the things that it was in the past.
Oh yeah, in internally, and meaning internally, not in terms of like, my internal system, but more internally, emotional, mentally, that way. It's completely different. And when I was probably in my fittest and competing in the highest level, yeah, I really had two emotions that I was dealing with at all times. It was either happy or really angry. And I tended to use anger a lot in what I did. In fact, I would listen to music to lift that wasn't necessarily angry music, not like hard rock, that kind of stuff that get you angry. It would actually be some type of almost sad music that would remind me of some of the most terrible points of my life. to tap into some part of my nervous system to where I knew it didn't matter what I was doing, I was going to do it. It was going to work, right? Like I'd make the lift or do whatever I needed to do. So I like used that as motivation, and that wasn't healthy. Yeah, just definitely wasn't a healthy place to be. And I would say my fittest in my life, mentally and emotionally, I was not doing well at all. The difference now, gosh, man, I've really dug up a lot of these things that have been buried for a long time. A lot of these emotions, the emotional spectrum is continuously growing from happy and angry to happy, sad, grief, um, joy, all the different things, right? And including sadness, including anger, all of it. And with that, the ability to just tap into anger and use it as motivation is kind of subsided. And it doesn't mean I don't work out as hard. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that, it's for different reasons. I don't have to push myself to that level anymore. I don't need to feel that level of pain because I'm feeling so much more all the time anyways. And, it's more about just feeling better and preparing. It's kind of like you said, no, it's more about, listen, I want to do this stuff in the gym so I could be healthier and be there for my kids continuously as they grow up. My daughter says she wants to climb Mount Whitney when she's 16, she's 14. I'm like, I need to be able to do that with her. Right. So it's not smashing myself in the ground. It's just being able to have these experiences with these people and the people that I love. And that's, all around, I'm willing to give up a little bit of this fitness for a lot more emotional and mental health. And that's kind of where the trade-off is happening here. And it's hard though. It's like I said earlier, I do feel like there's such an identification. I had identified so much with a certain type of person who I thought I should be, whether it be in fitness and career or any points in life. And I've come to this realization that, my focus and my goals aren't what it looks like or what I would be described as in a resume. It's more about how I would be described in a eulogy to some extent, right? Like my focus on success in any area, whether it's fitness and career and all those things, really has to do more about who I am, what my character is, versus what I do, how much I make, how fit I am, how I compare to other people on leaderboards or success or executive ladders or whatever it might be. It's more about, hey, am I doing these things to become the best version of myself? And not to change, but to take the essence of who I am and continue to transform it into something that shows up a little bit better every day for the people around me.
Mm.
And fitness falls into that.
Yeah. I think that comparison of not what would go on a resume, but what would go in a eulogy, that's powerful because that's completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
And we've all experienced it, man. Gosh, that hit me in the face really hard because I was going through it when my sister passed. I was going through it, man. I'd been divorced a few years. The career that I was in, things were changing in the community and in the company, and I wanted out and all this stuff. And I didn't feel like I was making as much money because through my divorce, you split up all the money and all these things, and it's hard, man. You're trying to rebuild a life and it's super difficult. So I was going through it and I didn't, I was measuring myself and comparing myself to everyone else in the world. And she passed and I sat there at her funeral and I listened and nobody talked about her job or what kind of car she drove or how much money she had. Like that was never mentioned in anything at any point during my time in New York talking to her friends. It was all about who she was, how she made them feel, how she, showed up for them daily. That's what people talk about. That's what when you leave, that's what you leave them with. I even think about that with my kids. I was raised with this idea that success was all about money, prestige, status, and that a father leaves money behind for his kids, and that's what you should do. I'll tell you right now, man, like, if I wasn't as in my girl's life as much as I am now, but I gave them a bunch of money when I died, it would mean nothing. It's not what it's about. I know that for a fact. I know that when I'm no longer here, what they're going to remember and talk about are the times that we've had together, the conversations that we've had, the time we spent together. It is those times where I'm in my truck and I'm driving them from school to practice, from practice to another practice, back to school, and we're having these conversations. And it's hard, and I feel like an Uber driver, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? How's this become my life? But I wouldn't give that up for anything. You could tell me right now there's some executive job that's making $2 million a year, but you have to work 60 hours a week and you can't be there with your kids anymore. And I'm passing it up, dude. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
You said something a few minutes ago that I think is really powerful. This idea that, working out for yourself was just like a way to feel again or feel something somehow. And from my own experience, like that could be addictive. Like I may not necessarily have been upset or sad, but feeling upset or sad was so powerful that I almost began to seek it and like immerse myself into the sadness. And for me, it was about, the most poignant time of that whole thing was like my biggest heartbreak ever. And I was listening to Pearl Jam and they wrote the song Black. It's almost like they were sitting on my shoulder, like taking notes as I was living my life with this person for 5 months. And every time I listened to that song, I just went into like ibogaine / ayahuasca of just self-punishment. And it would wreck my whole day. And I wore that as like a badge of honor of like, this is how much I can feel. And then when you're talking about this whole idea of healing and you start to feel all the things like throughout the days, the joy of, just even a cool breeze on your cheek, you're like, oh,
yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't have to rake myself across the coals to feel anything because I feel, I wouldn't say everything, but I feel so much now. I feel, I can look at people in their eyeballs for like some would say into their soul after I hug them. And like that, there's immense feeling that comes out of that, which was all gray and neutral and bland to me before I started to really connect with the core of who I am. So I really appreciated you saying that because that's for real. It's like I can't feel anything, so I might as well feel the pain of just beating the shit out of myself.
Yeah, and you said it, Mike, like you would choose music that would put you in that space. And you even mentioned like it is difficult. I remember when I brought it up to my therapist, I was like, my entire life has been built off being angry and using that as fuel. Now I'm not angry at anybody. I don't know what to do with my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hugs are great, dude. Just try it out.
It's so true, man. It's crazy saying it, right? But it's so true. You're not angry. You're like, okay, well, how do I do?
Yeah.
It's like the Princess Bride. It's like, I've been in revenge my whole life. Now that it's done, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. Have you considered piracy?
Yes. Oh my God. I love that you know that movie so well.
Oh, dude, it's like family. Like you're not even allowed in my family. Like even if you're in my family, you're not allowed in my family unless you know every single word to the entire movie. So
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this, Mike. So your wife's into fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And in December, y'all did the Anaheim High Rocks.
We did, yeah.
Do you think that, not saying she couldn't do it at that level, I'm just saying, was it more enjoyable because you weren't worried about where Mike landed on the leaderboard? You were doing it with your wife. Was that kind of a situation that you were doing doubles with her? Of course, High Rocks is challenging. I've done it, and it is hard.
It is, and it was actually the third time we did it, but the second time, I had a calf injury, and I was, dude, at 45, I'm terrified of busted, like a blown Achilles. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to do that, dude. So we just stopped. And the first time we did it, same thing. We did it with some friends, and we didn't care about the leaderboard, but I got crushed, absolutely crushed. And I was like, dang, dude, like I was really surprised how hard it was for me. So really on this last time we did it, it was like, hey, can we do this and just feel a little better while we're doing it? Like that was it. It wasn't about did we beat our times. It wasn't about did we beat the people next to us, because we weren't, because there's some unbelievable people out there. But it was really like, hey, when I'm on that 1,000-meter run, can I just feel better? I just want to be like, hey, I feel good. I feel good while I'm doing this. Which is really interesting because it's completely different than what we were saying. I wasn't trying to smash myself into the ground and destroy everybody. I really wanted to feel good, almost almost to some extent effortless. I mean, it wasn't effortless, but I will say, like, we achieved that goal, and it is doing it with my wife, and a lot of the challenging things that I continue to do because I like him. I like these ultra events. We do a 50K in Mammoth. We climbed Rainier. We're going to do rim to rim to rim. And it's, I like to do them with her because there's such a cool dynamic that takes place between us. And there's just something that is so like fulfilling, and I learned so much about it. I mean, at any moment, one of us is struggling a little bit, and then the other one kind of steps up into this front position and leads with compassion. Like, it's not like, come on, you got to do this, we got to beat everybody. It's just like, hey, I got you, I got you. And that's all it's about. And it's about it becomes more about the experience between us, and the experience that we have out in nature or out with this big group of people. And that's what becomes beautiful about fitness, is when it's about that. It becomes about the experiences that we're having, and the people that we're with. So anyways, yeah, it's completely changed. And I will say, even when I first started getting into these outdoor activities, even if it was something like climbing Mount Whitney, I was I was comparing myself to other people who was like, well, how are they doing? How did they feel? Why do I feel so bad? Why is the altitude affecting me so much? I get in my head, get angry, stop enjoying where I was and really taking it all in. And over time, it's completely changed. It's less about, how fast I am compared to the people around me. It's more about the experience and the awe and the beauty that you see when you're on the side of this mountain, or so. I know we kind of went in a lot of different directions, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, that High Rocks event was really about us working together and kind of accomplishing this thing and really feeling good while doing it versus beating anybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that came with healing.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Diego, I want you to talk about your psilocybin and 5-MeO experience. What are you comfortable sharing with us about
that? Man, that was what a pivotal moment in my life. That experience happened. It's kind of crazy how it even all happened, right? So a buddy of mine and his wife, they're both friends of mine. They have a fitness company that is, it's kind of like mental health / fitness company. It's really about like mindset and fitness and how to use it to work on mindset and all those things. And they were doing a fundraiser because they were associated with Heroic Hearts. They were doing a fundraiser for Heroic Hearts. And they asked me if I'd help them with their fundraiser. So, I said, yeah. And the fundraiser was to, help veterans, with, PTS, and to reduce risk of suicide. So, my father at the time had died by suicide in 2009. And so I was like, I'm in. And on warming up for the last 4 miles, I got a call, and it was my stepfather letting me know that my sister had just taken her life. So that was like my entry point into heroic hearts. And, I went to New York, and I spent weeks trying to help, that situation, being there with my family. And this group, they were having a seminar in early December. And interestingly enough, it was a couple days after a event we had for my sister to raise money for my nephew, her son, right? So I was already in New York, and then I went to New Jersey to be a part of the seminar and give some feedback. And then I'm at this seminar, and I'm out to, he picks me up, and he just looks, there's something new about him. There's something like fresh about him. And I say, "Hey, what's going on, dude?" And he's like, "Oh, I just went to Peru for parks, and did ayahuasca," and it was, tells me all about it. And so I had just done this fundraiser. I'm here. He's telling me about it. We go to dinner. A few other military friends are there. Now they're talking about psilocybin and ayahuasca and heroic hearts and a couple other organizations. And I don't know. There was something, was like, man, it was just calling me. It was like, it just kept showing up and showing up. So I reached out, and somehow, there's always a long wait list. Somehow I got in very quickly and went out to Mexico, to Yalapa. And I had no idea what to expect, man. Like, I had no idea. I mean, I had experimented with things when I was younger, completely different. I hadn't done anything like this in decades. And here I am showing up there with not knowing anybody, just my own gear, all this kind of stuff, right? And that experience, man, it was terrifying, but it completely changed me. The first ceremony was psilocybin, and it was just dark. Instantly. The minute I started feeling it, put our eye mask on, we're sitting there, you're trying to breathe and stay ahead of this thing and relax and let go. And, I just got pulled into the darkness very quickly. And it was one of the most terrifying things I felt like I've ever done. And it was this darkness, and then it was these like very quick insights into things like, we talked about my kids. It was this, I would get reminded of this need to show unconditional love to my children. And it would just wreck me, and because it just hit these areas that were so deep. It was a reminder of the performative nature of my own childhood, of feeling like I couldn't get love unless I was doing something spectacular. It was a reminder of how I tried to show love the most to my kids during like holidays or birthdays. And I didn't feel like I was showing them the love that they deserved on a daily basis unconditionally. I didn't feel like I was letting them understand that I loved them for who they were, not what they did. I'm proud of them for what they do. But if anything happens and they're not doing that anymore, like, I love them for who they are. And I didn't, the message hit me hard, man, and it broke me down. So there were a lot of things like that. And it was like, I would get it, and then I would just go into the darkness. I would just go into it, really what felt like hell. It definitely did. And it just felt like I was navigating the darkest parts of my soul and my personality, and digging a lot of that stuff up. And it was a purge. I mean, it was a complete purge of things that I have stored deep down in my nervous system for decades. So much so that, like, I was shaking. I was shaking so much that I thought something was wrong with me. And I had to have someone come over there and let me know that, hey, like you're okay. And I'd sit there, my hand was just going like a million miles a minute, and my leg was going like crazy. It was uncontrollable, absolutely uncontrollable. And then finally it all kind of relaxed. And I kind of, you kind of come back into reality of things. And so that was the first one, and it was hard. And when it all kind of dissipated, I was just left there. It was like a ball of emotion. I don't know that I had cried that much in decades. And not only was it me, it was like the people around me. Everybody was in. It's so interesting in those situations when you're in the group. Everybody's going through their own thing at the time, but often, like we land in a very similar position, and you land, and it's just raw. You know what I mean? You're exposed, you're opened up, and everybody's just there on the ground, like just, snot and tears. And it was wild, man. And it was probably one of the biggest emotional releases that I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah. How many ceremonies have you done?
Yeah, so I did that one. I did a psilocybin right after. I did 5-MeO right after that. So that was 3 ceremonies. I went to Peru, did 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, and then I've done a couple 5-MeO, additional 5-MeO ceremonies.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting since that point. My kids laugh at me now because since Mexico, I mean, I'll cry on like the drop of a dime now, dude. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like movies that we have watched 1,000 times, I'm watching and like I'm crying. They're like, Dad, you've seen this 1,000 times, and I'm like, you just see things differently.
Yeah. Oh,
You'll-
I've gotten choked up telling a story that I've told 1,000,000 times. That's not even sad, but they'll
Yeah.
register it as, wait a minute, that wasn't healthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. It
Yeah,
will.
it's
It
great.
opens you up.
it does. It does. Yeah, man. It was life changing. The second one was similar, but then went in a completely different way. Second one was crazy. That second psilocybin ceremony was so nuts. I'm super sensitive to it, so I tend to go in super quick. And same thing. We lay back, mask goes on, laying back, and I feel right away. As soon as I start feeling, I feel this, and it does feel like you're laying there. I mean, you guys know that you're laying there, but there are these like sensations. So like when I say it, I felt like I was getting pulled into hell. Like it literally feels like a suction, like a pull into some other realm, into hell, into some darkness. And I remember thinking to myself, like, dude, not again. Like, how am I, like, I thought we did this yesterday. Why are we going back here again? And Oscar, who was he's Aztec descent, he was the healer that was leading the ceremony. I mean, he walks around and I don't hear him talk to anybody else. And I'm laying there, and he just comes up and he puts his hand right on my chest and he says, brother, you need to open up your heart. And the timing of it, like, it just was absurd because here I am, and I am getting ripped down into the darkness. And he says this, and it just echoes through my brain. Open up your heart. And I think, you're kind of in and out of it. I think I just started even saying it. Open up your heart, open up your heart, open up your heart, open up your heart. Right. And like thinking like, what does that mean? What does it mean to open up your heart? What does it mean to love others, to let love in, to love yourself, to give yourself some grace, to give grace to other people, all those things. And I'm like meditating on this, and I can feel this tension between like the darkness of where I was going and like lifting up, like breaking through it, and then actually lifting up into something else. and it just let loose, and I lift up, and it was like pure awe and beauty. The colors had changed, the feeling, the energy was completely different, and it was very, very familiar, very familiar. And I remember really thinking, like, I've felt this before. I've experienced this energy. This energy I've experienced. And it all came back in that moment to, half a year prior, a little bit more than a half a year prior to June of 20, what would that have been? June 2023. And I was out with my sister and my cousin, and it was really the first time that we had gone out and hung out as just brother and sister. Like, there's always so much of trying to take on some type of father type role with advice and this, and want to nudge her in a certain direction, or be there for her as like a father figure that she could talk to. It wasn't here in this one. Like, we went out just brother and sister, and had the most amazing time. I mean, one of the best times of my life, and it was simple. It was just us hanging out in different parts of Long Island, having some drinks. We were all dancing and laughing and didn't care about what was going on around us and who was looking at us, and just having such a good time. And throughout the entire night, I saw her differently. I saw her as the mother that she has become, the young woman and mother, and I saw her full of love. And I kept telling her over and over and over again, how much I loved her. I'd hug her, tell her how much I love her, how proud I am of her. And I remember during that night even thinking, like, I got to tell her again. And I don't know why. Like, I didn't, there was something about that night, and just letting her know, like, how proud I was and how loved she was. And that feeling, that energy, those colors, all of that is what showed up at that moment. And it was overwhelming. That level of awe, I don't know that the human body knows how to experience. And what I mean by that is, I found myself laughing, crying, smiling, all these emotions were coming out at once because of it, and I didn't know how to handle it. And from what I can understand, because I was talking to Jesse, who was there, who started Heroic Hearts, he was next to me, helping facilitate. It looked like I was just having a seizure, right? Like, I was breathing and like was laughing, crying, trying to catch my breath. Like, it was, and he puts his hands on my chest and he says, "Dude, you got to breathe. You got to breathe." And so I kind of, once that happened, it kind of pulled me out of that whole area, that whole feeling that brought me back to reality, brought me back to earth, so to speak. I could feel my body and everything again. And I started breathing, and I lifted up the mask, and like, I was just amazed. Like, I just had this massive smile on my face, and it was kind of like closure to some extent. It was a chance to be there with my sister one more time, and also to know that she's there. She's here, she's there. And it was pretty, I'm looking around and everyone else is still in the middle of their journey, and so they came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want a booster? Like, you're probably right on the cusp of the time frame. Like, I know you're out of it. Like, you've come back. Do you want a booster? I contemplated it for a second, and I realized, like, no, I got everything I needed out of this. Like, this was exactly what I needed to get. And from that point on, I just kind of watched as the moon hit, and I could hear the ocean and the stars and the music that was happening and the people walking around, just that beautiful dance that took place right there. And I was so appreciative and grateful of the whole experience. And um, yeah, dude, it was incredible. It was, those two things of cracking open this emotional well, and then the entry point to understanding what an open heart is and feels like, and what the end result of that can be, was mind blowing. It life changing. And the interesting thing about these experiences, I say life changing, and it didn't mean that anything after it was easy. In fact, it was the opposite. And the last 2 years have been very difficult in the best way possible.
Mm.
It's when you can crack all that open, you get to feel some really great highs. You get to feel the joys and the awes and the happiness and the love. But you also have to feel those extreme lows, because you wouldn't let yourself for so long. And I've had to ride out some darkness,
Mhm.
and over the last few years, for sure, and had to accept that that's just a part of it, and that's okay to ride that out, to not distract myself, to not try to find ways, to get through it faster. Like, the arc of pain had to be experienced. You know what I mean? And it was the first time I like really understood emotional pain, like, what that felt like.
Yeah.
And I would explain it to my wife. I'm like, no, I feel pain. Like, when I'm in this dark place, like, I feel every aspect of it. I feel the weight of it. I feel hurt. I feel pain. And I know that I just have to let it take place. Like, I have to feel this and get through it. Which is hard, it requires a lot of communication, which I'd say I did fairly well, but there's a learning, because I need to let her know, like, this isn't about you. You didn't do anything, and this isn't about you, and this isn't about our current situation, because my life's great, dude. Like, I live an amazing life. Um, which gets hard because then you start feeling guilty. It's very easy to feel guilty for how you feel. And I've been able to come to this point of acceptance and knowing that, listen, like, there's a whole spectrum of feelings and emotions that I need to work through. And as I'm opening up as I'm cracking this stuff open, um, I'm going to feel things that I've put off, that I've avoided for most of my life.
That falls in line with it's always interesting when I talk to people about just my mental health journey, and they look at me and think, well, you're a veteran. Okay. But one, we know that it has nothing to do with our uh being veterans. It's always rooted in our childhood. There's all this added trauma that goes on to it. But life can be perfect or seem perfect, but having a missing piece. And that's what we've all experienced with psychedelics, is it helps us fill in those pieces that we're missing, that are crucial. And I say that to ask this question. I've never asked anybody this question, but I had somebody ask me one day. Okay, you mentioned your daughter's 14. You have other children?
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old daughter.
And a 10-year-old daughter. Okay, so let's fast forward. They're adults. they're in their 20s. Would you ever encourage them to do psychedelics?
I don't know that I would encourage anyone, so to speak. But if they came to me and said, Dad, I'm interested in this, and here's why, and they felt that there was a calling, like, hey, this is calling me, I want to explore it. My job as a father is just to provide some level of guidance and support, and make sure that they're doing the right level of due diligence to get the best experience, whatever that is, because the best experience doesn't mean it's pleasant, but get the best experience that they can get. And I think that, I think that answers my general approach to anything. And I've thought about that a lot lately, because when the girls are in my house, because they're 14 and 10, I kind of parent from a leadership perspective. I parent from the front. I don't parent out of fear. I parent out of respect. So I respect the hell out of my kids for who they are as human beings. And then I require that they respect me, but I don't want them to fear me. So there's not a lot of yelling in my house or any of that kind of stuff. There was in the past, but now there was a lot of conversation, that kind of stuff. But I do still parent from the front, because they're young and impressionable, and like we kind of have to be leaders in their lives. And I think about the time to give it like a football analogy, to where, like, Lucy, my oldest daughter, she becomes the quarterback, right? And she is on the field, and she's running the plays, and I'm like giving her some plays, but she's reading the defense, and she's calling audibles based off of what she's seeing, and I'm supporting the living hell out of her from the sidelines.
Yeah.
And I think that's, no matter what she ends up doing, like, that's where I want to be in her life when she's at that point.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I love that.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, man.
No, wait, you know what? Before Diego, I'm sorry. I know you're just ready. I got one more question.
Yeah.
Are either one of your daughters aware of your psychedelic experiences or what you're doing? How much have you shared with them?
Yeah, they don't know yet what the actual medicine is. They know that I have gone to different areas with veterans, and we have experienced different cultures and some of the healing that comes through their cultures. But giving them the details of, like, hey, it was ayahuasca or psilocybin, I haven't yet, but I've been preparing that conversation with my oldest daughter. My 10-year-old probably wouldn't quite understand it yet, and I love to be able to bring these things up when I can have a real conversation with them about it. And then it's like, my oldest daughter's there. I mean, we have conversations about everything, that drugs that go on under school, sex, menstrual cycles. Like, there's like nothing off the table, because I want her to know that she can come to me and we can talk about anything, and it'll be a conversation. So I've, boyfriends, like the whole thing. And I'm always like really trying to pay close attention to my own body language and facial expressions and tone and that kind of stuff, because I don't ever want her to feel guilty or ashamed for coming to me for anything. So, like, she's there and we can have this conversation, yeah. So yeah, it'll probably happen pretty soon. I was supposed to go to Peru at the end of the month, but we ended up moving. It just wasn't a good time. And I was going to let her know a little bit there at that point, so yeah, but it's definitely the time to do it.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm feel like I need to hide from them.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, Diego, I have no more questions. I do, but
your questions are so good. It's like, I never would have thought to ask that. So it's good. Yeah, I hear you, Mike. Like the idea of control the narrative of psychedelics. Like, cannot be like, hey, this is what you should do. Like, there are people in my family who they probably don't even know. I know that there are people in my family who don't even know that I'm involved in the space at all. Because when you're talking about being or finding your awareness at the edge of all that is, all the power, all the heaven, all the hell, like the last thing I want to do is man, if Diego put me here, it's like, no, because that's something that people cannot, I don't want anything to do with that. And so when at least the relationships and the connections with me, those are people who are coming to me and asking for, oh, okay, if this is, and then there's that, because I never want to be responsible or even have the hint or the notion that it was because of me that they're standing there at the edge of all suffering. And people don't know what that means until they're there. And it's like, you could tell, it's like, nope, that's not my baggage to carry. That's for sure. Man. But you were saying something a long time ago, that I think is really cool to talk about, the idea. So the first night you were on psilocybin, you went, you were experiencing all this pain and you're like, okay, you're going through it. And the second night, it's like, how did I get back here? Why am I here again? And then, his name's Carlos, right? Did I remember that? Oscar. That's right. That's racist. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I'm Mexican, so I can say what I want. He goes, open your heart, and then all of a sudden there's this whole transformational experience. And I think that is, I say it a lot of times, there's no difference between being on the medicine, being in meditation, or being in life. And life continues, or the universe continues to give you lessons until the lesson is learned. And so all that meant was the following day, when there was all that suffering still to experience, is that there were still lessons to learn just because you experienced it or whatever. It was like, and the lesson was to learn to open your heart, which it took the second night in order to do that. And then you experienced, all the positive things. And there are many people that I talk to, it's like, but I've already been through all that. Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? And the answer is, there is simply more to learn. And even with the idea of what anyone experiences on psychedelics, they can have this transformational experience on psychedelics. That's what's happening on psychedelics. Now you have to, this is what integration is all about, that you have to bring that level of awareness, that level of learning, that level of knowing, that entirety of all that stuff in order for that lesson to end. And so, yeah, it might have sucked. And yeah, good job making it through it and all that stuff. But if it hasn't been integrated and you haven't realigned yourself and balanced in the state of what is, then the lesson's going to keep on coming. And so, it was just really cool example of the universe doesn't care what you experienced. It doesn't care that it's just like, oh, still need to learn to open your heart. The only way to do that is to keep on dragging you through the fire, Then you were talking about, oh, I've been here before. I remember this. And so much of what we talk about is remembering who we are. What actually happened is, through the course of your life and the birthing process and all the lessons and all the things, there's just a disconnect from who you are to your current state of awareness. And it's not you. This is literally everyone I've ever met. And it was a really beautiful experience for you to bring into your awareness in this extra dimensional state. I've always, this is who I am. It's just all the static of the mind, all the static of, how I was raised and where my mind went because of all that and all that stuff that disconnected me from who I am at my core. And that's what's really, I think, so powerful about psychedelics. I mean, it didn't remember you. It just gave you, it just reminded you of who you really are, and should you choose in which you are. But should one choose, once they come out of the medicine, to continue doing the integration work, and bringing themselves closer and closer to that, where they can experience that in their normal waking state, that's the way. And psychedelics can just really be helpful in helping, like, oh, that's right. Like, I am love. I don't need to do anything to deserve this. And by the way, neither does anybody in my life. Um,
That is the lesson. That's the thread. That's the lesson that just threads itself through everything for me. Right? At some point, that I am love. I don't need to achieve something, do something, be something else in order to be loved. Nor does anybody else. Right? And it is like you were saying, like, you will be dragged through the mud over and over again until you really start to understand that. And some of my best learning experiences has come through the darkness, right? Like, it has come through being in this like really dark places, but having a level of awareness to be like, in that initial journey is like, why am I here? What is this
What's the
about? Why
lesson?
did I come back here? Well, at some, like, you get to a point now where I'm in it and I'm like, wait a minute. I know why I'm here. I know why I'm here, because I'm back to this point of comparison, feeling like I need to make a certain amount of money. I need to have a certain job. I need to be doing certain things, a certain fitness level, whatever it might be, in order to be loved. And if I'm not doing those things, I'm not going to be loved, and I'm going to be alone. I'm going to have all those feelings that I had as a child. They're going to come back, and I want to avoid that, right? And one of the last like big shifts that I've gone through was understanding that part of me, but then also knowing, we talked about this earlier, but also knowing that part needed to, for lack of a better word to describe it, needed to die. And I still want to be successful in life. I still want to have goals. I still want to orient myself in a certain way, so I have some level of direction. But success is no longer those things, and it's a redefining of what success is. And success is who I am, right? It's who I am to myself. It is like, to me, success becomes the relationships I have with my daughters. It does become the love shared between me and my wife. It does become grace that I give myself, that then I'm allowed to give other people. Like, those things are now where I've been able to orient myself. But this part of me that's been a part of me for 46 years had to go away. And there was a grieving process for that I had to go through, to say, like, this thing that has essentially kept me going, because it does, that level of comparison to other people, wanting love through achievements and all that stuff. There are parts of your life where, like, that actually does something for you. Like, it had its purpose. It got me to a certain point in life. It's just no longer serving me. It's not healthy anymore. It had to go. And then, like, that's something that happened very recently, but it's the same. It's the kind of the same lesson. It's the same thing that tends to transpire over and over and over and over again until you finally get it. And I think the thing through psychedelics is, we come out of these experiences and we are going to get the lesson over and over again. It just might happen with a little bit less intensity every time, right? It might be a year later and you're like, why in the hell? Like, I thought I dropped this. I thought I let this go. Why am I dealing with this again? And you're going to. that transformational process takes time. And you're going to deal with it again. You're going to go over it again. And you're going to do it with a little bit more awareness this time. And you're going to do it with a few more tools in your toolbox in order to get through it and get to the other side, the other, side of the arc, the start, the middle, and the finish of pain. And every time you're going to get there a little bit faster. I think what we end up doing is we end up building what you can consider like emotional muscle, right? When you've gone through so much of your life not feeling or feeling very few emotions, happy and anger, right? Happiness and anger is the only two that I've had, and then all of a sudden you open up the floodgates to all these emotions. It's like never going into the gym and then going in there and working out for 3 hours. And you come out and you're sore as hell. You can't move your arms, you can't move your legs, you can't wash your hair. Like your whole body is just sore. It's too much, too fast, right? But over time, your body adapts to that level of stimulus. And each time you go to the gym and you do the workout, it gets a little easier. You recover a little bit faster, but it's still freaking painful over and over again until you fully adapt it, right? And I think it's the same thing that tends to happen with these emotions and building up an emotional muscle. Like I'm going to deal with this again, but I'm going to be a little bit more adapted in order to deal with it, get through it a little bit faster, right? But I still have to go through that arc of pain just like I would if I was in the gym. I think that's what happens.
I just thought of a funny analogy. Ever seen Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
Where after they, they shot the dude in the back of the car and they take him to Quentin Tarantino's house to get rid of all the mess. And then John Travolta's character goes into the bathroom and he washes his hand. He wipes the towel. The towels are all this bloody, silky mess. And Jules goes, "What'd you do? I washed my hands. You saw me. You watched me get them wet." It's like, well, there's still more to clean, right? I learned the lesson. What am I saying? There's still more to go, dude.
Yes.
And we were in SEAL training. We had our room inspections every week, and the barracks were right on the sand. And so sand was all over in our rooms, not just because of, tracking in with our boots and stuff, but just by way of the wind, the sand making its way through the door. And we would sweep the room and we would spend 20 minutes sweeping this tiny room and we would get all the sand up and there'd still be sand all over the floor, and you got to sweep it again and again and again. And then what we would do is, with some of the people who weren't doing what they were supposed to do, they would start to put the polish on when there was still like these fine little grains of sand, and you would just have a shiny, grainy floor, and you would fail that inspection. You get in trouble. Like, you got to get it all up. And so I think it's like that too. It's like we have these normal living experiences. We heal, we drop 150 pounds of just not needed weight. And then a couple of months later, it's like, where did it didn't come back. It's just, you're just ready to drop another 150 pounds of weight that was underneath that other stuff. And so that's how you're good. It's because it doesn't continue to come back. And it's like, oh, okay, I am where I am now. And don't worry, there's plenty of other lessons coming and waiting. The work continues.
Yeah. I think that's an important part. I think that I always worry about some of the misconceptions, but it's everybody's journey, and you kind of have to figure it out. But I never want people to think that it's just this one-stop shop, right? You go out to Mexico or Peru or wherever the heck you want to go, and like you have some life-changing experience, and you come home and everything's different. It's like, well, life doesn't change. Life is life, and it's always going to be there. The lessons are always going to come. It's just that these experiences provide us with, more tools, more instruments to work through it. And we just want to continue over time in practice and integration to get as many tools as we can, right? If I just have a hammer, well, I can hit nails. But if I have a hammer, a screwdriver, a saw, a drill, and well, dude, like I'm in business. I can build something.
Well, you know what? That's perfect that you brought that up, Mike. Having the right tools. let's talk about Warriorside, your experience with it. Have you ever spoke before? Is this new to you? Have you done it? What was your experience going through Warriorside?
Yeah, this was Warriorside, like the storytelling experience was very new. Like speaking in front of people I've done in the past, but it wasn't about me. It was like, I went around, I traveled the world doing or teaching CrossFit seminars where we give, hour-long lectures to 60 strangers. But it was, it's about theory of CrossFit and fitness and health and those types of things. Um, a lot easier to talk about than your own personal experience. So it was drastically different in that regard, something I had never experienced. It was the entire process was, and it was another lesson. I mean, and it's what it is, right? It ends up being another lesson. It was a way to take these experiences, work through them with, a group of people, get it down on paper, which I had never done in my entire life, is actually take this and put it into something that now is like concrete and real, right? I think that process alone is very therapeutic. And I had never done that in 45 years at that time. Taken this entire story and written it out into something that is now real, and then to look at that and read it and work through it and bring it to this point to where it's presentable, and has it has some message to it, because all of our story, we all have a story. We all have a unique experience. And within our unique experience, especially if you've made it this long, and within our unique experience, there's something that is crystallized there that can be handed down to someone else. And I think that's a beautiful place to be in life, where you're at this point where there's wisdom gained through experience that could be, just provided to other people, whether they take it or not, whether it resonates or not. And some it will and some it won't, but I think we all have the capacity to do that. So it was really cool to be able to be provided that opportunity. Man, you talk about another emotional release. I don't know how many times we practiced that, Diego. We practiced a lot, and the first time I practiced, I got emotional. I did. I was in front of the group. I got really emotional just saying that out loud in front of people. And then I practiced, in front of my wife. I practiced in front of videos. I practiced over and over and over again. I felt like I was pretty solid. Like I got this down. And then I got in front of everybody and started talking. And I cried in parts where I thought I would, and I cried in parts that I didn't understand even why I was crying there. I mean, I do understand, but it was so unexpected. Talking about the support I gained from my wife, I broke down, because, it's a representation of that unconditional love that I've never thought I had, and it hits you in those moments. It is taking all of this and then processing it and then turning it into something presentable and then presenting it. And then all of a sudden these things start to hit you in different moments, like these aha things, like, holy shit, here I am my whole life thinking I need to do something to earn love. And here's this woman who loves me for like who I am in my bones, not for what I do, not for how much money I make. And she's there and she's with me as I'm, travel around going to Mexico and Peru, and I'm doing all this work on myself, and there's highs and there's lows and all this stuff. And like, she has not wavered at any moment. And in just saying the words, my wonderful, loving, supportive wife. All of that hit me. All of that hit me subconsciously as I'm speaking, and it broke me down.
Mm.
You know, and it's like that's the kind of stuff that I got out of just a, you know, what was it, 10 minutes, 9-10 minute storytelling, you know, me up there telling my story. As I'm telling that story, you know, in the back of my head, I'm flooded with these like holy shit moments. And it hit hard.
Yeah, well, you said it perfectly. You know, it's therapeutic. You know, to anyone listening, Warrior Side, you have Diego and John, and I'm drawing a blank on John's last name.
Bates.
Bates, yes, a professional speaker trainer. So you have between John and Diego, I had the same experience where you're learning to tell a story, but the emotions you go through just creating your story, you know, it forces you into it, and it is therapeutic. And to anyone listening, warriorside.org, we got to do our little plug. Support us, because this is for veterans and first responders. You're hearing it right now. Mike sharing his story, you saw his video. This is more than just speaker training. This is another part of the mental health journey that so many of us are going through. And it's incredible. It's beautiful. And on top of that, if you go to warriorside.org, if you're a veteran first responder, you want to be part of it, sign up. If you have someone you know, get them involved. If you want to support us, that's how this is going to continue, is with the support of everyone out there, that we can continue to reach out and work with these veterans and first responders. And another exciting thing that I want to share, that I'm going to move aside, is Diego wants to make sure he gets to take a group of men and women to Scotland on a retreat. And this is going to be beautiful. I mean, Diego's told me on the side what it's going to entail. There's going to be a lot of healing going on. And there is a fundraiser campaign on warriorside.org to help us do that. So go on the website, check it out, read up on it, sign up if you're a veteran or a first responder. If you want to sponsor, if you want to donate, do it, because that's how this is going to continue. So we can continue working with amazing people like Michael.
Oh man, thank you guys, man. Thank you so much for having me on today too.
Oh, no, it was
What
your last name was what messed me up. That's why I forgot John's. I was too busy trying to remember Giardina.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
I mean, so
Yeah,
I
you
can't
got it.
remember anybody else's name right now.
I grew up in the South, man. So my brother was G and I was little G. They didn't even.
Yeah, much easier for us in the South. Yeah, when you're up in Jersey, stuff like that, it's you're a dime a dozen.
Exactly.
I do want to tell you, Mike, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you.
Oh,
like, you are very articulate, you're a very intelligent person, and I don't mean just because you have great glasses. Like, you know, you really are the real deal. And as a father, I want to tell you, there's something you said when we were talking about your daughters, and you said that, one, you say you lead from the front. I think that's powerful. That's the best way to be a parent, because children don't learn from what we say, they learn from what we do. They're going to become us, whether they want it to or not. But you having open conversations with your daughter, those are hard things to do, but they're so important, because even a lot of us growing up, we didn't tell our parents things because it wasn't a safe space, you know, because they weren't in the right place to understand it. And we're doing the work. And, you know, the fact that you have those conversations with her, that's a lifetime. Like, you are going to be the person she comes to for the rest of her life. And I think that is beautiful. So just as one father to another, that I want to, my hat's off to you on that. That's beautiful.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, no, because that was something I definitely wanted to talk about. And we're here, so let's go.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it, man. You were talking before, Mike, about how there was this singular special night with your sister, and part of it was just a returning and remembering and reminding her of how much you love her, and that's it. There was no this whole idea of being a father figure and advising and pointing her in the right direction. one may not necessarily put the two together, but it is also connected to the idea that I saw, like you were talking about. You don't think that the human body is even capable of experiencing all the expansiveness of all the love, all the forgiveness, all the pain, all the things, and it was just like tight, 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 tight. And that's when Jesse came over, was like, "Hey, brother, you got to breathe." And I think they're both related to a singular thing. And this is something that I think is absolutely petrifying to parents, 100% petrifying to parents, and that's letting go. Like allowing your children to be as they are, that it's not up to you whether or not they're in jail or not, or whatever, all the things. And it's like, oh, what do I do if I don't do this? And not if I don't do this? It's like they never get to experience, for example, with their children, that moment, that night that you got to experience with your sister of, I just love you. That's it. Like that's the only fucking thing that matters. That's it. I just love you. And there's this really badass movie that I love. Before I knew about psychedelics, I didn't think it was that good of a movie. But then when I experienced psychedelics, I'm like, holy crap, this movie is awesome. And that's the movie Contact. Did you guys ever see that movie with Jodie Foster?
I know what it is. Yeah.
She listens out in space for just any kind of intelligent life to come back. And they ended up getting this message, and turns out the message is like blueprints to build this thing. It's like this big ball that's supposed to drop through these spinning circles, big giant thing. This thing's about like 300 or 400 feet tall. It's really giant. But what they did, and they copied the blueprints, but inside the ball, they were supposed to put a human, and this human was going to be an astronaut of sorts. And they didn't know what was supposed to happen. They're just building the blueprints. And because they were putting a person in there, they decided to put a chair in there. And so they put Jodie Foster, she ended up being the astronaut, into the ball and dropped it through. And then she ended up going through this crazy experience, this wormhole experience. And all the while she's going through this wormhole experience, like the whole ball is like shaking. It's getting like super, super violent, and so violent that you're starting to see like this chair that is like bolted in with astronaut quality iron bolts is starting to shake so crazy that it starts to finally breaks, and then the chair releases and it floats. And it's because we thought in our mind that this person needed a chair, and it's like, we didn't give you blueprints for a chair. If you just left it, it's just ease. It's just ease. There's no control. You don't have to do anything. It's all here already. And so approaching the medicine with, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to control. You can let go. Approaching that potential experience of the human experience of, even ecstasy and hate and anger and love and all of it. You don't have to control. I'm not supposed to not be feeling it. It is as it is, and I can just breathe and allow it to fully be. And then you can be interacting with your sister or your daughters of just being a reflection of, you have no clue how much I love you. And just that can be your relationship with literally everyone you want in the world. You don't have to control anything. And that's deep, deep, deep connection. And then it returns back to you, because imagine the relationship that you have with your daughters when they recognize that it's that they feel that you love them unconditionally, because there is no, I'm not supposed to be doing this. He's just loving me.
You know, I'm gonna follow up with that and because Diego has an older daughter. I have a son that's already moved out, joined the Coast Guard. He's living on Long Island, and I have another one that's graduating this year. And I tell people with younger children now all the time, the worst part of being a parent is when they move out. Not the worst part, but the most terrifying part. Like I would take back any fit they've ever pitched as a child to have my oldest son here in the house with me again. You know, of course, I'm proud of him. He's becoming his own man. But when they start moving out, and there's another thing I have to share. I'd heard it. I never forgot it. Is the majority of time, your children, they're adults. So this moment in time as children is brief. And what you said was so beautiful, because you're taking advantage of that moment. And I constantly remind myself, because even last night, my 18-year-old son came in, and I wasn't in the mood to talk, and he's a talker. He's a lot like his father. And I was like, but my wife was like kind of hitting me like, no, he wants to talk. I was like, okay. And we sat for like an hour and chatted about all these random things. And it was beautiful. And I credit my wife for flicking me in to be like, no, this is one of those moments you need to be here. And I was, and I'm so grateful for it, because those moments, we don't have them forever.
Man, there is something interesting with all of it. Well, like my wife does the same thing. I credit her as well, because sometimes I do miss it. I miss things, and very similar experience where my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter comes in, and like she is a presence. He comes in like track spikes and I ran this and this is what happened. I almost threw up, and then school, and then this person, and so I'm hanging out with my youngest daughter. My oldest daughter comes in, she walks home from school, and she's just a big ball of look what happened. And she takes over. She just has that ability to take over the room,
Yeah.
And then she kind of calmed down and, went in to do her homework. And I noticed my youngest daughter had gone upstairs, and my wife was like, hey, how come she's upstairs? Maybe we should go check on her and see what she's doing. So I go up there, and she's just hanging out coloring. And I'm like, hey, why don't you come downstairs and we'll color? And we have this thing that she's going to put on her wall that we're coloring. And we sat there for like an hour, like meticulously coloring the parts of this fox with all different types of what she called like hot and cold colors, and and all this stuff. And like we're like coloring it, and it was beautiful, man. Beautiful. It was like, had she not nudged me to recognize?
Nudged you, yeah.
She went up there. It was a little too much energy for her. She kind of backed off into her little area, but she wanted that connection, and it's like, you just got to find out how to do it with them. With her, it was different. It wasn't talking about sports and track and this and high fives. It was like, no, we're going to sit down quietly, and we're just going to color little blocks in here. And yeah, dude, I mean that, Diego, what you had said, it was only recent, it sounds weird, man, but it was only recently where the idea of the unconditional love that I was trying to express to my sister during that evening is what continuously, it was the first thing that came up in that first journey, was understanding how to express that to my kids. It's something that I've been thinking about and trying to work on, but it was only recently where like it all finally started. I started to see the big picture of it, and like, holy shit, dude, like all this is connected into the same thing. And it is just being that source of love, like, and letting go of everything else. And yeah, you said it so well. It's crazy how it all comes together that way.
Hey, Diego has a gift.
Yeah.
He actually does. I'll tell you what, like, not to just keep hammering the warrior side, but like that was what I mean. I loved working with John to fine tune my speech, but to have the presence of Diego there really takes it to another level. Like you couldn't find this anywhere else, because their combination and what you bring to the table, Diego, is absolutely incredible. I'm sorry to bump your ego. You should probably watch less movies.
Dude, we did have a lot of movie stuff in there, didn't we? Oh, and I'll tell you what, man, like the Forrest Gump thing, like, so my oldest daughter just watched Forrest Gump, and I'm watching that part, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I remember talking about this. It was just that powerful part when Forrest asked the question about his son, like, is he? And she's like, no, he's really smart, makes good grades. And he's like, oh my gosh.
That's what we show in class.
Understand.
What Mike's referring to is we show that scene. So we're talking about voiceless communication. And so one of the things that came to mind is, for me, it was that scene in Forrest Gump when Forrest finally reconnects with Jenny in the 80s, and she introduces him to the son that he didn't know that he had. And to me, that's just like a masterpiece in nonverbal communication, just looking at his eyes in the shocking moment. And then also just it's so subtle, but it's so powerful when he looks at her is, can I go see him, without saying the words? And everyone knows what he's saying. And that's such an important part of being able to tell the story. Can you tell a story without even saying any words? But anyway, it's some context. So thank you, Mike, for allowing me to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was powerful, and you start to recognize that in other areas, that nonverbal communication, where it's they're not even saying anything, but you know exactly what they're talking about, and like the emotion around it as well, like you could feel it. And I think with Warrior Side, man, like there is something, there's something very primitive about speaking and writing, right? Like that was our means of communication as humans for so long. So being able to take your story and write it out effectively and then tell that to other people, it's it's unbelievably therapeutic. It's why, you tend to see, like, especially in the very classic novelists, some of those classic novelists were going through a lot of shit in their lives, and the ability to write out their experience, maybe through fiction or even nonfiction, like Solzhenitsyn and the Gulag Archipelago. But like to be able to write that out was so therapeutic. You think about even like Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning, his experience and the being able to take that and put that into logos therapy in his book, like how therapeutic. It's, not to compare myself to Viktor Frankl by any means, just the experience of being able to do that, and being taught how to do that, being taught how to do that effectively, and then going through the process of that is, yeah, it's healing, man. It's really cool. I appreciate the opportunity to do that, Diego. So thank you.
Well, appreciate you. It wouldn't be anything without all of this. I've had so many ideas in my mind that just stay there. It mean nothing. So thank you for being part of the manifestation of, in the beginning and the building of all what this is and is going to continue to be. Appreciate you, Mike.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. This was
Thanks,
an
John.
incredible conversation. You're an amazing human being.
Oh,
A lot of respect for you. Keep doing what you're doing. Be just working on being the best husband, father you can be. Like, it's beautiful, man. It's absolutely beautiful.
Wonderful conversation, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes. And with that, I've got to pee now, so that tells us we need to wrap this up. Remember, warriorside.org. Check it out. Learn about us. Make sure you like this video, follow us, get updates, because this is one of many more podcasts to come. More incredible humans like Michael Giardina. Did I get it right?
You got it. Question.
Close enough.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow on Instagram at The Warriorside.